Hi, everyone. My name is Sung Choi. I'll be moderating this panel discussion on democratizing space, specifically satellite internet. Here with us, Tae Oh, founder of Spacecoin, and Akin Jones, founder CEO of Ella. Thank you guys for joining. Before we jump into the topic, could you guys give us short introductions about yourself and your company?
Hi, I'm Tae Oh. Hello. Was it working?
It's not on.
I don't think my mic's
Oh,
working.
yeah, it's working.
Okay. I'm Tae Oh. I'm a founder of Spacecoin, and before Spacecoin, I built CreditCoin, connecting the ideal capital of the developed market to the high yield opportunities of the emerging market. Deployed 100 million in loans to over 2 million people. And while we were working on that mission to bank the unbanked, we found a adjacent problem, which is most of the unbanked are also unconnected. So that we've been researching and starting to build the new project, which is called Spacecoin.
Great. Akin?
Hi, I'm Akin Jones. I'm the CEO and founder of Ella. Ella is a YC-backed company. We're building global mesh banking infrastructure. And what that means is we're allowing the last mile of the unconnected get connected into banking infrastructure. We're starting with Nigeria. We have over 2 million users. We evolved from being a digital lender to a digital bank. And now we've realized we have to hit the last mile of banking and last mile of users in the banking ecosphere. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Let's jump into the topic. Super excited to talk about this. Tay, so why focusing on satellite internet when there are companies basically providing high-speed internet through fiber optics and satellite? Isn't the market already saturated?
So the satellite market currently is paved, spearheaded by Starlink from SpaceX, and it proved that we can actually deploy satellites and provide global coverage from the space. But one thing that they are focusing on is higher bandwidths, which costs about $600 for satellite dish and $150 per month for subscription fee. And that's not feasible for most people that we are trying to serve, which are unconnected people in emerging market. Average GDP per capita in those markets are $2,000. So the cost of this Starlink isn't going to work. But on the other hand, what those people are looking for isn't to stream 4K Netflix video, but they want to have like a lifeline service. Like they want to be able to text each other. They want to be able to make financial transactions to each other and so on and so forth. So instead of focusing on like high bandwidth, but a little bit more expensive service like Starlink, we are focusing on optimizing for providing smaller data rate, but for more number of people, optimize for links. And that is why we are trying to build smaller satellites compared to what Starlink is doing and provide more coverage that way.
Okay. Akin, why do you think it's crucial for people in emerging market to have access to internet?
It's very crucial because right now, in emerging markets, over 1.6 billion people are unconnected. This means they have no access to various needs like healthcare, credits. And so what we've learned from over the years of building banking infrastructure is we just can't get enough done without that last mile of internet connectivity. There's a lot of banks right now. There's a lot of connection. There's a lot of penetration. But there's still a huge market opportunity out there. When I look at the opportunity, I look at it in four phases. So basically, you're talking about the banking side of things. You're talking about the blockchain side of things, what kind of layer you're looking at. You're talking about the military communications side of things. This is more about satellite security and sovereignty. So how do you plug all these things into one? How do you get regulations on your side? How do you get the central banks to understand what you're trying to build? I think over the years we've worked with the team at Glue and at Spacecoin to get the first rights of the CBDC, to do a CBDC MOU pilot in some of these markets where we could actually bank the underbanked. And the first thing we actually noticed was the connectivity to a lot of the regions where these CBDCs were going to work was non-existent.
Okay. I mean, that's fascinating that, I mean, we are always connected 24/7, and it's really hard to believe that there's that many population not having access to basic internet. I mean, it's just it's interesting. So Tae, just want to ask you, I mean, who are the key members and the advisor at your company trying to achieve this mission? Because, building, launching satellite and operating internet service seems like a very complex job, to me at least. So could you provide some details?
So we are basically merging three different engineering expertise into one. So obviously space, because we are building satellites. Launching satellites, building satellites, operating satellites is one expertise. There's one engineering group focusing on that. And we also have a RF engineering group who focuses on the telco stack. So essentially we are building a cell towers from space. So we have a team focusing on designing the architecture of our telecommunications network, and also link design, link budget, and so on and so forth. And we have a blockchain engineering team who's focusing on how to manage the decentralization of the network and making sure that everything functions while staying decentralized.
Okay, great. So Akin, I have a question for you. So, I mean, you're based in Lagos, running a fintech company serving unbanked, underbanked populations. How does satellite internet service allow you to achieve your mission, which is financial inclusion? Can you provide me with a little bit of details on how that works?
I think that's a no-brainer. I think, as I've said, I think the goal is to allow the unconnected get connected. I'll use an example. We went as a team to train people in one of the far northern regions in Nigeria on AI tagging and blockchain technology. And even when we got to the regions and the rural regions where we did that training, there was just not, the connectivity wasn't strong. So in the big cities, you have 5G networks, you have 3G networks. But when you get to the smaller towns, we're talking 2G networks or non-existent internet infrastructure. And there's huge populations in these small towns. And the governments are trying to bring progress and infrastructure to these small towns, trying to do training. Most of the agricultural produce that happens in most of these regions happen in these small towns. So the best way to get these people credit, the best way to get these people access to technology to solve their problems, be crop data via AI and all this AI tagging, all these things that can really help them, is through internet. But the internet costs are too expensive for them. So how do you bridge that gap of the cost of the internet and the technology? And I think that's where we're trying to find that right mix. We've been talking to governments in across Africa. We've met with the presidents, vice presidents of Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia. So we're really trying to build this global African mesh banking infrastructure. And we've also gotten licenses to test and pilot Space Network and Spacecoin in various markets. And so if we can join all this together, we can really make something that's special. Versus 7 to 1%, we can serve the other 3 billion people that have been excluded. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So that's great. So let's go back to the broader vision. Tae, why is decentralization of internet infrastructure so important to you and to everyone here?
So because of the satellite technology, now it became feasible to launch a satellite and provide coverage for a large amount of surface area. And now it became cheap enough for small companies like us to launch our own satellites. And that inspired us to think about, actually, instead of one company owning the whole constellation and controlling it, we can now decentralize the network, allowing people to free to join or leave the network. and creating a permissionless connectivity. When I say permissionless connectivity, I'm not saying we need to have a permissionless connectivity everywhere for every purpose. But that's similar to what Bitcoin is doing for US dollar, for example. Like while US dollar works, your bank works, wire transfer works, people wanted to have a permissionless option, so they created Bitcoin. While cloud computing works, Amazon, AWS, Azure, but people wanted a permissionless option for cloud computing, so they created Ethereum. So what I want people to have a permissionless option when it comes to connectivity.
Okay. Akin, your thoughts on decentralization?
Decentralized internet is important because of people's rights. So there's a lot of lack of security in terms of government interference in banking and credit. And if you want to build the future of banking, you have to totally decentralize it. So we're talking about building a space network, a bank that's in space. So a bank that basically, the internet is decentralized, the bank itself is decentralized. So the bank is decentralized via something like Creditcoin, whereby the entire credit system and the credit repository on how we read credit scores is totally decentralized. And then the internet itself is decentralized so that no government or no person can tamper with customers' information or their rights in terms of how they bank, how they move money, how they make payments. We see a future where, yes, there'll be regulation layers on it, but it'll be totally decentralized where anyone, anywhere can permissionlessly move money around.
I'd like to add one more note. So when we say decentralization and being permissionless, we're not doing this for the end user only. The middle service manager or the service providers such as telcos or governments and militaries, they also want to have a decentralization because relying on a centralized service provider for the satellite connectivity is dangerous. So if a government or military cannot ensure that when things go south, there's somebody who can turn the whole internet off from your region. That is not a safe, secure system. So for that reason, they are interested in participating in this technology. And for example, like they don't want to deploy hundreds of satellites all around the globe, which is wasteful. So let's say 10 different countries participate, 10 satellites each, form a constellation, providing 24/7 connectivity. But when things happen, your country can ensure that at least 10 satellites up in the air is satellites that you own that nobody else can turn off. So that's another level of decentralization and permissionless where it becomes valuable for not only for the end user, but for governments and the telcos.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I know you're working closely with private sectors like Ella. Are you also currently working with public sectors as well? I'm sure because there are multiple use cases, and if you can share some of the use cases that are not confidential, that would be great.
Can you elaborate? Sorry.
Can you share some of the use cases that that you're working with private sectors and maybe public sectors?
One interesting use case I can think of by having a decentralized network of satellites is we recently filed a patent called proof of location and velocity. And it's by assuming there's a decentralized network of satellites up in the air, instead of just knowing where you're located using triangulation, you can actually create a proof that you were located at that point of time, which can be useful for physical security. So, for example, not your smart contract can be not only be secure because only you know the private key for the smart contract, but also you can enforce that smart contract to be only get signed at a certain location. So if you secure the physical area, you can have a physical layer of security, not just the digital security.
Okay. Can you share some of the milestones you already achieved from Spacecoin, and then maybe future events that?
We deployed our first satellite last year, December, which we used to demonstrate the space to ground connectivity. We are launching 3 more satellites October this year, which will demonstrate the handover getting connected from one satellite and gracefully being handed over to the next satellite, and also inter-satellite link, a satellite talking to each other. And by combining those two, we're gonna make satellites compare nodes when it comes comparing those about the signal coming from the ground, so that they can normalize noise out and have a better, stronger signal. And from then on, we're gonna decide how many and what type of satellite that we're gonna launch for our service constellation and start going live.
Great. And I know you're focused on Nigeria, but do you have a plan to expand to maybe nearby countries or other continents?
We are currently focusing on 3 most populated countries in each region. So Nigeria from Africa, India from South Asia, Indonesia from Southeast Asia. We are also talking to a bunch of different other countries around those countries. But initially, we're going to focus on those 3. And what we believe is if we can start serving hundreds of millions of people, roughly 800 million people unconnected in those 3 countries, we can start serving people around those countries as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. This has been truly fascinating discussion to me, and I hope was the same to the audience. Do you guys have any final thoughts you want to share with the audience? Akin?
I think the future of banking is going to be decentralized. There's so many people excluded from the current financial systems we have. And I think it's all about leapfrogging. I think when you think about emerging markets, I don't think you should think about them as backwards. I think you should think about them in terms of leapfrogging current technologies. If you look at the likes of M-Pesa, they leapfrogged current technologies with their agent banking systems. And so when you think about global mesh banking, I think you need to think about it as a way to leapfrog current banking institutions using an entire decentralized system, be it from satellites to banking networks to local agents that we like to call satellite banking nodes. And so these agents are working hand in hand with the satellite system and are working hand in hand with the banking system to get people access to finance and access to credit and create this new banking network that hasn't been seen before in areas that have been ignored and passed up. So as I said earlier, the focus on a lot of these conferences is on 1% new technologies. But I think, the future is in the fastest growing parts of the world with the fastest growing populations. We're going to see Africa have the largest workforce in the world in the next 20 to 30 years. And so those people can't be ignored. And so you have to build solutions for them. And the more solutions you build for them, the more opportunities you create. And I'll end on that.
Tae?
Spacecoin is building very hard problem, trying to solve a very hard problem. But I think it's a very important problem because I really truly believe, and we need to have a permissionless option in everything if possible. And currently, because of the capital problem, it's not being solved in the connectivity layer. If we solve this and create a decentralized constellation enabling permissionless connectivity, I think it will enable so many stuff, like the proof of location that I mentioned, that they were impossible before. And we will get to see not only adding 3 billion people who's unconnected to the digital economy, and then move on to the connecting people, the resources in the space that we are currently not getting access to.
Thank you, Tae. Thank you, Akin. Thanks everyone for joining this discussion today. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.